Hi and welcome. This is Tina Persson and I am on the channel PhD Career Stories. I have a new setting, as you see, new background, and of course a new exciting guest. Her name is Rachel Kindt. She's a PhD and she's a free consultancy in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm really happy to have you around, Rachel.
Thank you, Tina. It's so nice to be here speaking with you today.
We are oceans between us, but it feels so close here in the Zoom as I have it here. But who is Rachel? Very, very shortly, and then I will hand over to Rachel herself because she can introduce herself much better than I can introduce her. But she is a PhD. She's running today a free consultancy business. She has over 20 years of experience from the biotechnology and the pharmaceutical industry in what she calls drug development strategies. So Rachel, that's very complicated for me. Could you please just shortly explain how you ended up there after your PhD?
Absolutely. So when I was doing my PhD, I really imagined that I would go on to be a professor, an academic professor. But when I came to do my postdoc at UCSF in the San Francisco area, I realized that there were many more options. And I joined a small biotech company as my first step into industry world. This appealed to me because I always figured that I would use my scientific abilities to help fight human disease. And at the end of the day, working in the biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical industries felt like a more direct path than going and doing my own lab and doing a lot of research in a very specialized area. So I joined this first company based on my scientific expertise at the time. But what I ended up doing there ended up being so much different than what I expected going in and opened all sorts of new doors. So the path then took me from a bench scientist to leading a research collaboration with another company, to being a leader and project manager in drug development. And it's taken me from companies that were 100 to companies that were 100,000, different roles in management and leadership, and always with the intention of bringing new therapies to patients. It's been a really exciting ride, and now I'm in a new chapter of it. About a year ago, after my company was acquired, I left a full-time biopharmaceutical job and went out on my own. And
wow.
Maybe at the end, I'll tell you more about what I'm doing now.
Yeah,
and now we can focus on the questions that our listeners have about what does this all mean?
Yeah, what is it? Because you see, when I contacted you, you contacted me actually, I thought, wow, this is the woman I need to bring on the channel because, when I work as a coach, I get so many questions about these job opportunities in the biotechnology field, small, medium enterprise, up to these huge companies in the pharmaceutical industry. And nowadays there's so many titles and we will not go through all of them, but I know that you're an expert here. But before going there, I still have, kind of another question, because the feeling when you went from academia to the first job, and you said something that was such a big difference. But what was the big difference?
Yeah, there was a lot of differences. And I think these are really important and useful for our listeners to understand. The first difference was so let me just tell it as a story, because that's the best way that I can tell things, which is that my first assignment there was working on a project that was in collaboration with another company. And so we were having a meeting or a phone meeting with the other company, and we were talking about the research we were doing. And I looked around and I realized, wow, there's a lot more here to pay attention to than just the science. If we're doing good science, that's fine. But there was the response of the collaborators. There was understanding what they wanted, right? What was the match between what we were doing and what we wanted? There was the questions about how the work we were doing would impact the business. I mean, we were a small company. We needed the work to be successful. We needed the income coming in from the larger company. So there were all these other factors in the work I was doing that I had never experienced before. And I started to get interested in more than just the science and the data. And that took me into different types of roles. So that was one big difference. And the other one, which is maybe... Okay.
Yeah, please.
No, let's go on.
Yeah, you say one of these different because you could see so many opportunities. And so to help our followers here, the opportunities you saw, what were the opportunities?
So the opportunities that I saw was that there was, so thinking generally about the opportunities, it was a way to make a difference in how you develop drugs that was not just working in the lab. That was the sort of general category, because there were people doing all sorts of different roles there. More specifically, I started to become aware that even though my title was scientist, the work that I was doing at that company went into a lot of different other categories. So that's one thing about industry jobs, is that often the title doesn't really encompass everything that you do and all the facets of the work that you do.
And I think that is what confuses many of the PhDs and postdocs that have been in academia for very long, when they read the job ad and it's read, you know, scientist, and then they start to read and don't recognize the job directly. And that different companies define the job titles and what's actually in the job. It can be very different. So this is something that I hope that we can sort out. Why is it like that?
So I would have to say, I was thinking about this before our conversation, is that there's no magic answer. I'm not going to be able to give a magic answer that you figure it all out. I think in a way you have to accept that these words are just guidelines, and then to learn more about a particular job and find out what the responsibilities are by asking questions, asking the people who are offering the job, or asking people who are in a related field, because there's not one right answer to that. Maybe to go to the root cause of it, though, the reason why there are so many different variations is that in drug development, and I'm also going to talk about drug development, and that encompasses work in a biotech company, a pharmaceutical company, it's a very complicated set of activities. So in order to get a drug to market, you need to do so many different things at so many different stages, and people contribute in different ways. That's part of the complexity. Even if you're hired as a scientist, or let's say you're hired as a scientist into a company, and you are going to be doing work on cardiovascular research, how that work is applied and the role that you have may be very different. You may be asked to do a certain type of experiments or another type of experiments. You may be asked to communicate your findings to other people in the organization who are not cardiovascular scientists. You may even be asked to work with the commercial organization to help them understand how to describe the science to patients and doctors.
Yeah, the quality department, I guess, is also something that's important, because that's also something that is often written in the job. We appreciate if you have some sort of experience with quality or quality standards.
Absolutely, that would be a very good example of an area. And maybe the piece of, in a way, reassurance that I want to give the listeners is that most of these different types of roles that are being referenced and we'll talk about today, people don't go to school just for them. You do learn it at some point on the job. So there aren't 100 people out there who know all about quality coming out of PhD and want to get those jobs. It's really about learning new skills and acquiring new knowledge as you go through your career so that you can do different things.
And I'm so glad you say that, because this is something I try to tell my coachees, that because they ask me often, Rachel, following question, but can I take a course? Because this is also part of the comfort zone for many
Yes.
PhDs, that I take
Yeah.
another course. And I said, the best way of learning is that you need to go and start to work at the company, because it's sort of a mindset that you need when it comes to quality and the way of working in these. But we were not focused on that. I thought, we discussed to help our listeners here.
Yes.
There's so many titles, and
Okay.
what do they comprehend? And that you're an expert, you've
Yes.
been in the business for
Absolutely.
20 years.
Absolutely.
So we will try, even though on the broad perspective, they asked me, can I really take a manager role? And I
Mhm.
try to explain it really depends on the manager
Right.
role
Right. Right.
or what kind of company and etc.
Yes.
Let's start with something I wrote down here that I think you
Okay.
can sort out very quickly or nicely. We have project manager, program manager. What is the difference?
What is the difference? Okay. There is, generally speaking, there is no difference, is the first thing I'm going to say. So if you're interested in the field, that's the executive summary, is that you could be applying for jobs that are program or project managers. And the type of work you do may be very similar. And sometimes people use, so a project is something that has a start and an end and some sort of process in it. So a project manager is somebody who coordinates all the activities from getting that project start to the end.
Mm.
When we're talking about drug development, that start and end may be having the idea for a therapy, maybe even coming out of a lab or an academic lab, and eventually getting it approved by health authorities to go to patients. That's a really long project. It can
Yes,
last
very
10
long
years.
project, yes.
Really long project. So a project manager, and building a house is a project, and there are project managers to build houses or buildings. It's about coordinating the steps together. So people use program and project loosely and indiscriminately. So sometimes program is entitled to mean something broader to a project. Like if you have a collection of projects, maybe that makes a program. Instead of just one drug in cardiovascular, you have 5 drugs, and so there's a program around your cardiovascular therapies. I'm just picking cardiovascular as an example.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, just to get the context. And then, you can have a project, because as I coach them, I say, you have done a PhD. So the PhD itself is a project. And then you have each article is a smaller project in the bigger project. So could that be, translated to project manager in the pharmaceutical industry?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because nobody goes to school yet to become a project manager, program manager. This is, again, the reassuring point. People come from different backgrounds. Some program and project managers have PhDs, some don't. That's, pluses and minuses there we can talk about. Basically, there are so many types of life skills even and work skills like doing a PhD that translate into project management experience. So to your point, somebody doing a PhD, how are they planning their work? If they need input from other people, how are they collecting that input? If it's not a solo work, it's you're collaborating. When do the collaborators' work come in that you need that to move to the next step? That's project management. For a lot of people, I think running their household every day is project management.
That's also project management, yes. And particularly with some women, we're all with children back and forth, yeah, that's project management, multitasking in many ways. So if you now look on the qualifications here, and since you have a PhD, so, I have now a client, they want to write and say, okay, I want to apply for this project manager position. What do you think is essential for them to highlight in the resume?
Absolutely. Maybe also I can give the experience that what I went through applying for my first project management job. At that point, I was in industry. I wasn't coming directly from a PhD, but I had to do what I had to do after I realized that I might be interested in project management. The first thing that I did is I took a very short course, and a 2-day course on introduction to project management. And the reason I did that is that I wanted to understand the language that was used. The language is
Smart.
very
Yeah.
important because then you can speak the language and describe the experiences that you've already had in the context of the field that you're trying to get into.
That's a very good tip. Thank you. I have, to all of us, listening here, listen to what Rachel said. You don't need to take a course for half a year. You can go to LinkedIn, LinkedIn have product management courses. You listen to that, could even be one day. You learn the language, you translate the terminology so you can use your transferable skills. Yeah, transferable skills and translate the academic skill set to a language in the resume industry, understand and value. That's how you nail a project management job. Is it true?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. That is, and you can do that. So I took my science-based resume. It wasn't
yeah,
that I discovered this gene or discovered this target. It was that I coordinated the work of several scientists to meet the goals of the partner. It was that I aligned opinion, I got consensus across a number of different areas to move forward together to solve a problem. Those were the type of experiences and stories about what I'd done that I was able to translate into getting this job.
yeah. You use storytelling why you like to coordinate things, why you like to have a more broad picture of things, and then you write that. That's absolutely wonderful. If you give 3 kind of key skills for, if you like, or to help the listeners, will I like that job or will I not like it? Because not everyone will like to be a project manager. So, but what do you need to like?
I think the first thing you need to like is that you need to like organizing and organizing other people. If you are a person who would rather focus on what you are able to do with your own hands and mind, it's not a good job for you, because by almost definition, project manager is a collaborative job.
Yeah.
You are trying to get a group of people, a group of departments to achieve something together. So you then become very focused on the work that they do, as well as the work that you do yourself. And so this interest and ability in organizing beyond yourself, that's really the first thing. The second thing is, and it's, I think, really a bonus, because of all these projects have so many different facets to them. If you're developing a drug, there's input from research, there's input from clinical, there's input from manufacturing, from commercial, from legal. It's great for a person who likes learning a little bit about a lot of different areas. That was part of the reason which I knew I wanted to be a project
Yeah.
manager, is that I realized that I was becoming less interested in spending my whole life studying a particular pathway or a particular gene, that I wanted to learn as much as I could about a broader range of functions, a broader range of knowledge. One of the things which makes PhDs really good project managers is that all the training you do in learning and testing, you usually can pick up new information pretty quickly, especially if it's technical information. And that's a lot of what you're doing as a project manager, because every project is different. Maybe you're working on different diseases and you want to learn a little background on that. PhDs are great at that. So those are 2 things. And then maybe it's intrinsic, but the third thing is really that you need to like working with people. Often a project manager does not have full authority to get done, like a hierarchical authority. You must listen to me and you must do that. It's about building the relationships,
Yeah.
helping people, listening to them, solving in a good way their problems. That if someone on your team is responsible for something and they have an issue, you can help them solve it, which I think is one of the most fun parts of the job.
I mean, it's really good because, you are talking about people skill. You must like to deal with people and understand that people are different. you know, and not everyone have the same kind of dealing with deadlines like you have. So you have to start to understand that other people deal with deadlines differently and they get stressed differently. That's one thing. And then also maybe that you're not so super interested in small details. It's more a broader, big picture mindset that's good to have as a project manager.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I like what you say about people's personalities, because that is part of it.
Yeah.
It's also that, and this is again, I think one of the fun things is that when I was in graduate school, I was surrounded by people who were doing around the same thing that I was. And to some extent, they were being trained to think the same way. But if you're working at a biotech or a pharmaceutical company, you're working with people, some of them have gone to law school, some of them have gone to medical school, some of them have been in sales. Their approach, natural approach, may be different from yours. The information they have may be different for yours. The incentives they have to be successful may be different from maybe different from different parts of the organization. So you're taking in a lot of information about people. And that's really fun if you're interested in it.
If you're interested in people. So if you know, it's like you have got your project manager job, what is a possible next career step in a company?
That's a really good question. There's a couple things about that. Project managers are very much, the good news about project management is that they're very much in demand right now. And I think for the foreseeable future, it's not the type of function you're going to be able to automate. And clearly in the world we live in today, making new therapies is essential and will stay essential. And the programs will continue to be complex and need to be managed in this way. So sometimes people, you can grow as a project manager. Usually what happens in your progression is that maybe you start out by managing one piece of a big picture, like you would be the research project manager. And I maybe want to stop and say here is that sometimes that's a good way to get into the role, even if you would be interested in managing the whole drug development project. You may be able to find a job where you're managing one piece of it, which teaches you enough to learn to get the other job. So that's a note about job searching for it.
That's a good note. And I have a vague feeling here that if you start off with a project manager job, you are connected with many people inside the company. So you actually are building bridge to many departments. And in that way, you are building a network very quickly inside the company.
You're absolutely right. And that gives you two things which are really interesting. First of all, when you talk about career path, which was your original question, the short answer is you can stay in project management and grow, do more complex projects, manage other project managers. One of my direct reports just become the vice president of project management at a small company, somebody I worked with. So you can do all of that in the function. And it gives you exposure to so many other functions in drug development. And does that even make sense to your viewers when I say functions in drug development? I mean, there's other groups that are involved in it that you may be interested in working with. Also, people that I have trained in project management, some of them have stayed and some of them have gone to do work in finance or in regulatory or in commercial, in other areas. And it gives you the exposure.
Because, when you go from a PhD and you step into that role, you very quickly learn the work style and what other people like about the job. Because I have that experience myself from colleagues at my age. They started to work for AstraZeneca and they started as scientist project manager, and then suddenly they ended up in business and business development. And I say, yeah, I did that because when I worked as a project manager, I thought, science and drug development, that is what I want to do. But then I started to realize that business development is a lot about strategy, and actually that triggered me more. So I started to promote myself for that department.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's a great learning project. Being a project manager is a great learning role because, like we're saying, you get to see so many different aspects of a business. and you learn a lot about the core function of these companies, which is, this is the value chain, right? This is making the medicines that are going to help patients, but also eventually create revenue for the company. So it's a
Revenue
very
for the company.
central,
Yeah,
you got to do that. It's a very central role. And also, it does give you an idea of what other roles might be like, which I think, again, getting back to advice for our listeners, the first place, the next job you have, wherever you are now, opens up more possibilities of what you can do afterwards that you learn as you go along. And that's been one of the really fun things about my career and about the careers that I see other people having in this area.
I have one more question for you, then we're going to go over for another job title here. It's
Okay.
a bit different from the project manager, but still a manager role. And that is, how long would you say, when you come directly from academia, you take a project manager job, how long does it take before you really are good at that job?
So maybe an intermediate step would be that I think that while you may be able to go directly into a project management role from PhD, and I would definitely want to say that you could and should, it's also helpful before you go into it to spend some time just working at a company. Because part of what you're learning as a project manager and what you need to know is just how to navigate the internal ways of working of that company. So let's say in this, if you say you go from a PhD and you become a scientist at a biotech company, you're learning, if you move then into the project manager role, is going to be a lot faster because you've already learned how things work at that company, which can then be translated to other companies. But once you start the project management role, you can really, actually, it doesn't take that long to achieve a good level of mastery. I would say 3 to 5 years, and maybe less. Some people are great after a year or two, but 3 to 5 years, say. This is almost sometimes a downside of the role, because once you've learned it really well, often then people want to move on. Or sometimes they recognize that every project is different. It's not like maintenance, it's not like you're doing the same thing in January, same thing in February. Every project is different, so there's always learnings. So you might notice in this conversation, those of you who know about project management, I haven't talked about tools. I haven't talked about processes. I believe that the best project managers are the ones who come in and focus on the soft skills of interacting with other people. You can learn, I know everyone on this call can learn how to use project management tools. What takes longer to learn is how to work with the people.
Is how to work with the people. And I'm so happy to hear this here now. And before we move on to the other title, I'm just going to wrap up a little bit to our listeners, because you see, very often I hear following that, I can take a step-in job like project manager, and then after a year I will step on, and I say, I think it takes a little bit longer to be a master in project management, because it's not only about handling the software, the tools, it's about the people. It's people business. So you need to train that. And I know some of my clients that called me back and they said, I don't know, something's missing. I've learned everything, but it seems as yeah, you learned everything that is technical, but now you must interact with people around you. Learn how to communicate with your manager, how to communicate with the different stakeholders and with your colleagues and the team that you have around you. That takes a little bit more than 1 year, doesn't it? It's a lifetime.
It is, absolutely. And also you learn the content. You develop a second, what is it, a seventh sense, a second sense for when things are going to go right or wrong based on your experience on prior projects.
Yeah, it does. So thank you very much for clarifying that. It helps many of our listeners here. We're going to shortly talk. Time is running here. You realize that you had many titles on your list, but there is one that I know many also ask about, and that is team manager. And then comparing to a principal scientist, you have scientist, principal scientist, team manager. There's a
Mm,
corner here. It's
yeah.
sometimes they sound very similar, sometimes they not. Sometimes a postdoc experience can go directly to team manager. I can read that in the job ad. And sometimes, no, you should probably go to scientist and then to principal, or scientist to team manager. Could you try here
Right.
very briefly, try to sort it out for our listeners?
So when you see a job with the title manager in it, it means that you are going to be responsible for more than your own work. You're going to be responsible for the work of other people, or you're going to be responsible for, yes, the work of other people, either by managing them, being their supervisor, or even just by being in collaboration with them, where you're semi-accountable for what they do. Does that help? I tried to go fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, if you know, as soon as you see manager, but project manager is a little bit different from principal manager or principal
Absolutely.
scientist and team manager. Team
So
management and principal manager, or kind of a principal
let me
scientist.
help you out. I think there's
Yeah,
an important clarification
yeah,
here.
good.
Manager is used in a lot of companies as
Yeah,
a role and hierarchical term.
exactly.
You're a manager, a senior manager, a direct, and then it goes to director and VP and all those hierarchical titles. So manager sometimes just tells you your place in the organization, as well as a little bit about the role as I described. Project manager is a type of job. A
It's a
manager
type
could
of
be
job.
anything. You could be a manager of manufacturing, you could be a manager of cell therapy, you could be manager in commercial, but project manager is a particular type of job, or program manager.
So that's the difference. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Now I think you helped a lot of listeners here. Okay, project manager I can apply for. Team manager, that involves actually that I'm going to manage people.
People or projects, or
People
projects,
or
but
projects as
likely,
well.
but
Yeah.
likely people.
But
And
like,
again, that should be clear from the job description.
so
If
if you want
really
to go,
managed.
if you know postdoc here, and you have been postdoc for many years, and you say I like to apply for a team manager. You maybe had as a postdoc a little group of you supervised PhDs, you had a technician. Usually postdocs have technicians. They could have master students, internship that they have been managing. Is that so-called a good experience for to be a team manager in a pharmaceutical, or should you take a step job before you apply for team manager? What do you
What
think?
you bring to the table, if you're applying into a role like that, what you're bringing with you is, first of all, the expertise in your
Yeah,
science, which is
yeah,
going to be very desirable. And then you are also bringing, as you say, the piece about if you've had the opportunity to manage people in a lab setting, if you've done other type of work, which gives managerial activities like a volunteer role where you are coordinating a group of people, you can bring all that. The reason why they may not put you in that role is because that you may need to have some more experience about how industry and drug development works in order to manage people to do it.
yeah.
It depends, right? Actually,
Yeah.
by the way, I should say that, and it's funny that I'm saying that. When I went to my first company, I became a manager and I didn't have any idea what I was managing other scientists. And I didn't know what I was doing yet. I had to learn it on the job. So anything's possible.
Anything is possible. And I like to hear that too, because this is also something else. In the end, it is maybe about, if you like it, the competition and the policy in the company that sort of decide. I have run into a situation, they apply for a team manager. The company like the person and they say following, okay, we don't think it's fair to put you on the team manager, but we think that you will be a good team manager in the future. So we put you as a scientist, and shortly after you could step up to become a team manager. That they say it because you maybe need to get involved with the software. We're talking about software structure and get the network in the company.
Yes.
Would you say
Yes.
that could be a reason?
That is an excellent, I think that is an excellent example where again, the first role that you get in, if you're interested in working in this type of company, almost any role is okay because it gives you an opportunity to learn, and it gives the people in the company an opportunity to see your skills and strengths and interests and grow a role from that. One other thing I want to mention is you're talking about flexibility in jobs. In general, smaller companies, the jobs definitions are less rigid because you start with 5 people, you go to 10 people, 20 people, there's a lot of work to be done. And so people need to do it regardless of their job title. So in a smaller company, you may be more likely to be kind of put in a situation which you haven't been trained for. At a larger company, there's more people, it's more defined, and so the job descriptions may be more fixed.
And I completely agree with you. I say if you don't get what you want in the pharmaceutical, start in a biotechnology company, get the skills there and grow with the company, sort of. Yeah.
Yes.
But we now have this question again. One of our listeners are sitting, oh yeah, I want to be a team manager. What to write in the CV? I know they're thinking about that. What to highlight in my resume to say, I like to be a team manager and now I could do that job. What should they write?
I think in that case, in your resume, in addition to highlighting the work that you did yourself with your own hands, it would be helpful to find examples where you helped other people succeed.
Wow, that's a good one. Yeah. That's a good management skill, isn't it? I think we end with that one. That was a really good one. Help other people to succeed. People that do that, they will be successful.
In addition to it being relevant to the question you asked, to me, it is a foundational part of my whole career in industry, is helping other people succeed. And it's one of the most rewarding parts of the work, because in addition to moving towards a common goal, which is meaningful, like developing a new medicine, you're also helping people grow. You can do this. You don't even have to be a manager to do this. You can be a team member who is supportive of your team members or your colleagues. I think it's something that is not as emphasized in PhD training, so it's why I emphasize it here.
Yeah, and I'm very glad for that, because you see, I would like to highlight it again, that in academia, we tend to focus on solving problems. We analyze, we have a critical mindset. We like to do things on our own, but moving beyond academia, you must be part of a context. So it's not about solving everything on your own. It's to ask for help, get help, give help, and help other people to be in the shine. To shine, even by maybe cakes to the coffee table. Ask your manager, how are you? And this is also something that you have a manager, and the manager, it could be a boss. You can have a bad manager, but do you know what? You're also responsible to build a relationship with your manager and to understand your manager's situation and job, basically, in the company. It's not a friend. You have to understand his job and what he has to report to his executive level usually. That is to be smart when you go into the company. So thank you for sharing. I work a lot on that too, Rachel. Please develop your soft skills and your people smartness, I call it nowadays. But now you talked about project management, program manager, and team manager. And I know many of the listeners here now, you are many, say, okay, thank you, now we know that. But I also know listeners say, but now we would like to know about Rachel, how she ended up in consultancy, and how that is like, because I know we have listeners dreaming, they have a hidden dream, like maybe once upon a time I could start my own business. Would you like to share a bit?
Well, absolutely. So again, going back to how I got here, I've been working in organizations for a long time, increasing levels of responsibility, and really amazing experiences working with people and learning a lot for myself about how to, not just how to do drug development, but how to develop a strategy, how to build new organizations, something I love doing, like give me okay, you need to build a new project management group. Okay, I can go do that. And finding out the things that I really love to do. And when I had left my last job, I took time to think about what I really love to do and work to design a set of activities, not just a full-time job, which reflected what I wanted to do. And there are a couple parts of that. I realized that I wanted to give back what I learned as a PhD going into the drug development business. That's part of the reason I'm on the call today, or the reason I'm on the call today is to share some of that. I realized that I love coaching and mentoring people. I knew that, but I'm doing a coaching certification. And I also realized that in addition to doing these new things, I love working with biotech and pharma. So how is a way that I can do that without going and taking a full-time job, which then may not give me time to do these other things that I want to do? So I'm really right now experimenting with being taken on as a consultant to help a company do one specific thing. So if you're going to be a consultant, you need to define ahead of time very clearly, what is your role and purpose? And so if you define that and you agree on the compensation, you go into the company and you work for them to do that. It's different because you're not a full employee. You don't have a manager, you don't have career development, you don't have access to the department meetings or the end of year holiday parties when we used to do that. You're in a different state, but it really allows you to focus on doing the type of specific work that you want to do. For most of my career, I wanted to do everything, like, don't be specific, give me a job with many different things. But now at this stage, I really want to focus on the type of things that I like best. And that's where consulting fits well.
Fits very well. And if you get tired of it, you can swap very quickly if you want to.
Exactly. There's not the commitment is really can be short term, it can be agreed, but it's very different. So I'm really early in this.
You're very early in that. Yeah.
The other thing I want the listeners to know is that, okay, I've had a 20-year career. I am still learning. I'm still making mistakes. I'm still finding out things about myself and the type of work that we do here that are very interesting to me.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I started my business now 7 years ago, and it's exciting to see how I shift my business and how much I have to learn. I mean, just take Corona and all these digital tools. It was like, I swapped my business 180 degrees. And I thought, my God, I have to learn many new things. There's no way I can stop learning. And I have to take courses and trainings to learn even more. So it's amazing. So there's no end.
There's no real place where I believe in the type of work that we do and that the people on this call are definitely going to be doing, that you stop learning because the world moves on. Technology moves on. You get new hopes and dreams and you want to get the information to do them. I did an informal poll recently of some of my graduate school classmates, and the variety of things people I went to graduate school, the variety of things they are doing is amazing. And many of them spontaneously said that they were still learning, that was part of it. Okay, they'd achieved a certain amount already in their career, but today they're still learning.
They're still learning. So keep on learning. We need to start to close down the podcast a bit here, and I'll end the podcast a bit where the time is running here, but it has really been a fantastic opportunity here, Rachel, to listen to. So thank you for all this very valuable information that you give to our listeners. And I'm extremely excited to have you on board here and be chatting with you now for almost 45, 50 minutes. So thank you very much, Rachel. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on board. But before leaving, if you have one listener here or several listeners saying, okay, could you give them 3 very quick tips for applying, what they should really think of when they apply for a project manager job? Just very quick, what to think about.
Absolutely. Learn the lingo, learn the language, look at what you have done that is already project management. And when in doubt, focus on the people aspects of the work you've done versus the technical aspects of the work you've done when explaining why you want the role and what you've accomplished.
Thank you, Rachel. And with that, we say, have a great evening and thank you for listening. This is Tina Persson on the channel PhD Career Stories.